Backyard Green Films is proud to present this episode of Agri-Culture with your host, Alara Bowman. Alara and her husband Rick travel throughout the land in their teardrop trailer that they have nicknamed Maggie, bringing you stories about their travels and the people they meet. They visit farmers, ranchers, and just about anyone who loves putting their hands in the dirt or their feet in stirrups. In those travels, they have gotten to meet some very interesting people. Here's one of those interviews.
Hi, this is Alara. Welcome back to our podcast. This is a pretty special episode for us as we're celebrating the 1-year anniversary of our weekly agriculture podcast. Time seems to go pretty fast these days, but still, 52 episodes and a year now? Wow. I'm assuming that some of you can relate to that funny concept of the time warp as well. The older you get, the faster it goes, they say. Life definitely goes in cycles. Since we're recording this in the first week of March, this time of year means a little bit of rain here in San Diego, which is the exception rather than the rule. It means our chickens have started to lay eggs again in our little urban backyard, and that the pear and the peach tree are showing signs of budding and flowering. And for me, since my other life is related to bookkeeping and taxes, it also means that I'm at the height of tax filing season. Spring ends up being both one of the most joy-filled and the most stressful times of the year for me, so I guess the cycles I'm referring to also involve daily ones. Getting up in the morning and seeing the life outside in my yard, and then going to work and seeing the death and destruction that the tax code brings. I'm just kidding on that last one, by the way. I actually enjoy my work immensely, even though some of you might think that I'm somewhat of a space alien for saying so. Many people in agriculture these days have the same type of life. Spring is one of the most important and busy times of the year, what with lambing, planting, planning, and all the rest of the chaos that occurs in farming. On top of that, they also have the aforementioned joys of filing taxes, so I feel a little bit of kinship with them, although I don't have quite the same 12-hour days in the field that many farmers and ranchers have about now. Spreadsheets and Schedule Ds instead of spreaders and seeds for me, I guess. But as the world turns around at a faster pace, I'm a big believer that it's good to look back on where you've been, and where you are, and where you're going, and why you do what you do. It reaffirms the progress and the purpose, at least in my world. In that spirit, we've decided to bring you a little recap of some of the people and the adventures we've brought to you over the last year. Some of you might not be aware that the agriculture podcast you're listening to is only one of the media projects in Backyard Green Films, which is our production company. It's not the only thing we enjoy sharing, though. We use other forms of media to focus on stories of history, music, diversity, sustainability, and agriculture. We post clips on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Our YouTube channel, Backyard Green Films, has video clips of some of the people we've met, the places we've visited, and the people we've worked with on our journeys. For all of you that might want a visual picture of some of these animals to go with a mental one you might have, please visit our YouTube channel for a peek of many of our podcast guests, including most of today's content. Since we believe in what many of our interviewees are doing from a conceptual standpoint, you'll also find some of the promotional videos that Rick has done over time. What you'll hear today represents a snippet of what's on our YouTube channel. Here are the guests you'll hear today, and we hope you meet them again on our YouTube channel. Bill and Lori Marion, Shasta Ranch, Klamath Falls, Oregon. Bruce Pettish, Tangled Oaks Farm, Siler City, North Carolina. Elaine Shirley, Manager of Rare Breeds, Colonial Williamsburg, Virginia. Megan Hensley, Donkey Farrier from the Donkey Welfare Symposium in Davis, California. Jeanette Behringer of the Livestock Conservancy at the Mother Earth News Fair in Albany, Oregon. Elwood Quinn, Quinn Farm, Rare Breeds Canada. Libby Henson, the Rare Breeds Survival Trust. Tish Saar, Pleasant Grove, Occotequis, Sacramento, California. Harless Markham, Cozine Springs Ranch, McMinnville, Oregon. Tammy Fuller, a fiber artist from Bluebird Studio in East Aurora, New York. And Bob Doxey, Lazy BD Donkey Farm in Missoula, Montana. So now I have to stop to say something. My husband is a very kind soul with a good heart, as he's a sucker for doing what he can to help. That means he usually doesn't get paid anything for filming or posting what you see up there on our channel, including things for conservation organizations and small farmers and ranchers and musicians. That's why you see the variety that you do. We'd love to change the economics of that situation, of course, so we can afford to keep bringing content to the public sphere. But for now, our goal is to bring awareness to concepts that demonstrate the diversity of our world and help people who work toward that goal every day. If you click and view our videos or listen to our audio content and share with people you think might be interested, it truly helps us to do more of this in the future, and it helps small farmers to get the word out in a way they otherwise might not be able to do. And the last thing I'll mention is that we do documentary films, including our current project, The Holstein Dilemma, Heritage Breeds, and the Need for Biodiversity. We are extremely proud to announce that we are officially deep in post-production on that film, and will be able to announce an official distribution date very soon. It has been 4 of the most exciting and exhausting years of our lives. Just off the top of my head, I can tell you that to do something like this, we've done over 40 plane trips with multiple stops. Thank you, Southwest Airlines 2 bags free. Somewhere between 75 and 100,000 ground miles. More eating out of a cooler than I prefer. More research than I ever thought I could do on my own. More staying in a trailer than I imagined I might do in a lifetime. More coffee than is healthy. A lot of missed sleep. And all of it done on a self-financed basis. I value my marriage and my husband's health, so I won't tell you the ballpark of the total dollar figure. We thank you for your support and for continuing to share this adventure with us. Here's to the coming year and all the new adventures in store.
I'm Lori Marion.
I'm Bill Marion.
And our farm is Shasta Ranch. There we have St. Croix sheep, and we're located in the Klamath Hills there, which is eastern Oregon over the Cascades. It's hot and dry in the summer and cold and snowy in the winter. Our sheep are St. Croix Hare sheep. They originated in the U.S. Virgin Islands in the 15 and 1600s. They were possibly a result of the native breed, the Criollo, and West African Hare sheep, also bred with the Wiltshire Horn, which is an English sheep when the English arrived there. They are sheep that shed rather than needing to be sheared. They grow a winter coat so they can survive the winter, and then they'll shed in the spring. They're very parasite resistant, which is a product of being raised on these islands, naturally developed, and they're also very good with hoof rot. Their hooves stay healthy even in moist conditions with just a little bit of care. We raise them for meat. We find that they are more tender than the most lamb that I've had. They do have that kind of lamb taste and smell, but it's much more delicate than some of the lamb that I've had. So I can definitely recommend it as lamb for table use. St. Croix sheep tend to be a medium-sized sheep. The average ewe will be between 140 and 150 pounds. A ram can be up to at least 200, sometimes over. The rams tend to grow a very nice mane that can sometimes reach down to their knees, and they have a very pronounced Roman nose, so they look very regal, some of the rams. But as I said, both sexes are polled, which means they don't have horns, and they tend to, even the rams tend to be very docile. They tend not to be aggressive towards humans at all.
While they do tend to be slightly smaller than some of the wool breeds, the fact that they do produce so many lambs and can produce basically year-round, we think more than makes up for that. So we do have a lower cost of production and a higher rate. Again, our lambing rate, something over 200%, about 220%, and our conception rate, if you will, is about 96%. So when we do put a ewe with a ram, there's an extremely high probability that that ewe will become bred and will successfully produce for us.
For someone who hasn't raised sheep, this is a wonderful breed because they require little care. They're very hardy. They obviously don't need to be sheared. They lamb pretty much unassisted. We've had well over 100 lambings and we haven't had any disasters. So if you're a novice and you're just beginning, this is a great sheep. Their food requirements are relaxed because they're not producing lots of protein in their wool, so that they can thrive on lesser foods than some wool sheep can. And because they're browsers as well as grazers, they eat grass, which is lush and green. They also love weeds and tree leaves and whatever they can find, and they'll eat all of these things even when it's brown and dry. So they're great sheep for a beginner.
From a commercial perspective, because the animals have such a high lambing rate, in our case over 200%, and the fact that they're aseasonal breeders and you can get 3 lamb crops in 2 years, we thought they were an excellent choice for a commercial lamb production operation. We're able to get really high productivity out of the animals, as well as a low cost to produce because we don't have to deal with issues such as parasites, and shearing the animals and dealing with a lot of the other issues that have to do with wool breeds. So not only are we trying to conserve a threatened species, we're also trying to develop them into a viable commercial product that hopefully other breeders will become interested in as well.
Yes, that was one of the reasons that we chose St. Croix sheep, because we wanted to help save animals, breeds that are threatened, and the St. Croix both seem to meet all our needs and be a breed that we could help conserve by doing that. So we conserve them, we raise our own flock, we have about 50 ewes. We help disseminate breeding stock to other people who might want to raise them, and we find they're the perfect sheep for our production of market lambs also.
When I think of the Conservancy, I think probably the thing that attracted me to it and one of the most important roles they have is awareness. I was not aware of livestock breeds being in jeopardy. When I started on the idea of raising cattle on our farm, I didn't have a clue that there were breeds endangered or anything about that. This was just kind of a shoot in the dark at the opening of our adventure in this area, and it was the Conservancy that really brought all that to focus and made us aware that there were breeds that were really important but terribly endangered because the public had passed them by as far as making them a product that they wanted. The best example that I can give is, and the diversity in the grocery store is better now, but apples. When I grew up, you walked into a grocery store and there were maybe 2 or 3 different kinds of apples, red delicious, yellow delicious, and maybe something else, or 1 or 2 or 3 others. But there weren't a lot of different kinds of apples in the grocery store. So we bought what was there, and we thought that all apples were either red delicious or Macintosh or whatever. And I think that happened after the war with breeds of livestock. There were breeds that were preferable from a mass industrialized standpoint because they matured fast, they had a good product, and they advertised the heck out of it, and people just began to look for that product. And local farms started to reduce and all of that. The Livestock Conservancy to me has been absolutely instrumental in making people aware that there are all these breeds out there that are wonderful, that have great attributes, and that people ought to seek out and use for their meat products, for their protein products.
Sheep! Sheep!
I take care of the
sheep, the cattle, and the poultry at Colonial Williamsburg. My title is Manager of Rare Breeds, and our sheep, our cattle, and our poultry are all rare breeds of livestock. So part of what I do is kind of general farming work to feed them and give them the veterinary care that they need, and lamb and calf. But then a big part of what I do is also to interpret to our visiting public and help them understand how livestock's different in the 18th century. And because the animals are a little different, and because I want our visitors to think, we have breeds of livestock that are rare today, but are breeds that very easily could have been here in the 18th century. So it became the capital in 1699, partly because Jamestown, being close to the water, caused a lot of issues with mosquito-borne diseases, and the water wasn't very good, and so they moved here to Williamsburg. And it was the capital until 1780, when during the Revolution it was realized that the British could bomb the capital city from either of the rivers, the James or the York. Hey girls, no, don't come out. You can't be coming out. Look at that. So the Nankin is a bantam, and bantams are small chickens. Now with the craze in chickens today, there are a lot of breeds that have been miniaturized. You select the smallest and then the smallest and then the smallest, and you get a miniature version. These are what are called true bantams because they don't have a large counterpart. They were not miniaturized. And we see bantams on inventories. We also see letters where people write about raising bantams, particularly young women. It's a good way for them to learn about the poultry yard, because this is a woman's responsibility in the 18th century, taking care of poultry, and so a good way to start is with bantams. They're kind of a fun little thing, and we have them here at Mr. Witt's house because he's very wealthy. And so he doesn't have to have chickens for eggs or meat production. He can have them for fun. The main reason this breed was kept around was because the females get very broody, and they do a very good job of sitting on the eggs of game birds, pheasants and quail primarily, so that if you want to go shooting with your friends, you need to raise the birds to shoot. And so these birds will sit on those eggs. And this summer we actually had a lady call us and say, I have quail and I have fertile eggs. And I said, oh, bring them to me and we'll put them under a Nankin hen. And she hatched them out. So it was neat to see them do what they had originally been selected to do. These are an old English breed of sheep called Leicester Longwools. The Leicester Longwool is a breed of sheep that was developed in the 18th century, same time period that we talk about here in Williamsburg, by a man named Robert Bakewell. Robert Bakewell was pretty much a contemporary of George Washington, being born in the first quarter of the 18th century and dying. Robert Bakewell died in 1795. George Washington died in 1799. He wanted white sheep that matured in 2 to 3 years, that were medium size and didn't have horns. And anything that didn't fit in that box to him was not a Leicester, even if it had lived in Leicestershire for 100 generations. So he's the first person to write a breed description. And any of the animals in his flock who didn't fit the breed description he wrote, he ate. And he had them breed and breed. And again, anything that was born that didn't conform to his breed standard, he ate. And after a while, he got animals that bred true time and time and time again. And that was a whole new way to look at livestock. The cattle here are milking Devons. Now today, this breed of cattle is called American milking Devons because the milking strain is gone from its home country of England. And so now this is an American breed, and it's up to us as Americans to keep this breed going. So this is our group of adult cows, adult females. We have 7 adult females in here, ranging from age from about probably 6 to 16. And we have 2 fairly elderly girls in here who are both in very good shape, and one of them standing right there chewing her cud with her eyes shut, looking very, very happy and pleased with herself. So this is one of the breeds that we do actively breed here at Colonial Williamsburg. We have a bull, and all these girls are pregnant and are due to calve for us this spring. And this breed of cattle is a great representation for the 17th, the 18th, and the 19th century, because these are cattle that are triple purpose animals. You don't select one thing at the expense of others. So they're fairly good milk cows. They make enough milk to keep a family happy. They are heavy enough that you can eat them as beef animals, and they're smart enough that you can use them as work animals. So milk, meat, and work are the 3 reasons that people keep cattle. Now, there are certainly lots of byproducts, and when I ask that question of visitors, they always come up with lots of byproducts. The work aspect is very hard for modern visitors to think about, so they always come up with milk and meat, and then they say leather, manure, horns, and all of those things are important, but work is the 3rd main reason you raise them. So you use virtually everything from the cattle.
If you would please introduce yourself, tell us your name and why you're here at the Donkey Symposium.
Oh man, my name's Megan Hensley, and I'm here at the Donkey Welfare Symposium because, first of all, I love donkeys, and also I'm a donkey farrier. I've been working with donkeys, providing them hoof care for the last 13 years, and just in the last 2 years, I became a donkey farrier specialist.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
So is that you're also speaking here, correct?
Oh, yes. I forgot, yes. And so last year was my first year, and then they asked me if I would consider speaking this year, and then I said yes.
Okay, what were the talks that you gave?
Okay, the first talk I gave for the veterinary track was rebuilding or restoring abnormal hoofs. So we were talking a little bit about some of the pathologies and different diseases that the hoof might experience, and then very commonly distortion. The hooves will get distorted because they're not being trimmed frequently enough, or maybe they've been in a neglect situation or rescued or something like that.
Is that funny thing where that goes up in the
Yeah.
front like a shoe? Like a
Yeah, it
shoe?
looks like commonly it does that, what we call the slipper look. I did have a video of one of the donkeys who was experiencing that on his hind hooves, and then there's a few different things that they can have. So we just talked about how we can help them grow healthier, better hooves.
Is there a difference in a donkey and a horse pedicure, so to speak?
A little bit, but not a whole lot. But the hoof structure is just a little bit different than a horse, so you are addressing it a little bit differently. But there's a lot of the same principles.
Are they, now one of them is well, not so much here in this country, but one of them is used more for hauling, and the other one is used as a riding animal, not exclusively, but a little bit more, correct?
Oh, yeah.
So is there a different shape that needs to happen on the hoof?
Well, the donkey hoof is already in a little bit of a different shape. It's shaped more like a U. Their frog sits further back, and inside the hoof capsule, they actually have a bigger digital cushion, which is like this fatty, fibrous tissue that's like a cushion, and then we have these lateral cartilages that come around to the bone, and they have a bigger lateral cartilage, bigger digital cushion, which then reflects in the hoof structure. You'll see the frog is bigger, sticks back, and they have horses' hooves are flexible too, but a donkey's hoof can really flex, and that's because they have so much more the lateral cartilage and the digital cushion, which is that softer. It's not really softer. It is softer, but it's more fibrous, flexible material.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Interesting. Well, my horse experience is pretty limited.
Okay.
It was a long time ago. But I do remember I felt really badly about taking a hoof pick to the underside of the hoof because I'm thinking, okay, that looks so sensitive. Is the bottom of a donkey's hoof, is that very sensitive or what?
No, not if it's healthy, but they can experience sensitivity if they have thrush or an infection in the frog or in that area of their hoof. But no, if the donkey's hoof is really healthy, I mean, they could scoot and just run across a rocky desert and be totally fine. They're very sure-footed and can do a lot.
So if a donkey runs around in the desert all the time, do the hooves naturally stay down? Or
They do.
Okay.
That's how they self-trim. And so when I look at what I'm thinking about for a healthy donkey foot, I like to look at the wild donkey and say, there's going to be some that aren't totally ideal, but for the most part, the wild donkey hoof is a really good example of what the domesticated donkey's hoof should look like.
My chickens do that too. They constantly scratch in the dirt
Okay.
and they stay naturally really, really low. They stay at a good length and they take care of themselves, but it's only when we stick them on something that's not necessarily natural.
Hi, I'm Jeanette Berenger, and I'm Senior Programs Manager for the Livestock Conservancy, and we're here in Albany, Oregon for the Mother Earth News Fair. And some of our members have been kind enough to bring some really special heritage breeds to the fair to share with people, to show them that there are these wonderful, diverse breeds that you might not see every day, and they can often be a really great option for a small farm. What we have here is a really interesting breed from France, and this is the Faverolles, and they're from Normandy. And the interesting thing about the Faverolles is for centuries, these animals were selected just for production. They didn't care if they were white or blue or what have you. They could be any color, but they needed to be really productive, producing a lot of eggs, producing a lot of meat. But over time, people really wanted to give a specific look to the chickens. And this animal here is the most common variety of Faverolles, and this is called the salmon Faverolles. And you can see they're very beautiful, multicolored birds. And this is a very excitable rooster. I don't think he's been handled too much. But they're really great homestead birds. They're paying attention all the time. So if you have predators, these guys are going to be looking for predators all the time. The challenge you have with Faverolles is they have feathered feet, as you can see, and then they've also got this beard. So if you're in a really wet, muddy place, this might not be a great breed for you. But otherwise, if you've got really great drained soil, these are really hardy, nice option, not to mention they're eye candy. They're typically very calm in temperament. This breed does not do well in chicken tractors, so if you have a really tiny, confined area, it's not going to make Faverolles happy. They like to wander. So if you're looking for an interesting breed for your farm, you might consider the Faverolles. There is one other color variety, which is the white, but they're extremely rare. There's only about 2 or 3 people in the country that actually breed that color variety. So most of them are going to be the salmon. So think about them as a breed for your home.
Elwood Quinn, and I'm a livestock coordinator for Rare Breeds Canada, founder and co-owner of Quinn Farm, Ile Perrot, Quebec. Rare Breeds Canada, very similar to what is done in Britain and here in America, except we do it with no budget. We have zero, so yeah, it's a small group. Was probably at one time one of the leading world groups on genetic diversity. My dad had some of the first purebred Holstein cattle, Yorkshire pigs, and Cordell sheep in Canada going back to the 1940s. So we got to know a bit about diversity. I had some of the first Danish landrace that came into North America on the farm where I grew up. So yeah, we did a lot of crazy stuff.
Okay, my name's Libby Henson and I'm Director of Grassroots Systems Limited. My father was very interested in rare breeds always, all his life, and he was the founder chairman of the Rare Breed Survival Trust back in 1973. So I was made a junior member. I've been a life member ever since I was 18. I sat on the board of directors. I was a technical consultant to the RBST, and currently I run all the registries for them, all the Rare Breed Survival Trust combined flockbook registries, and we provide the software to pretty much all the breeds that are on the RBST list. We're very lucky that His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales is patron for the Rare Breed Survival Trust and is very actively and involved and interested in what we do. He's an organic farmer himself. He has a large estate in Gloucestershire at Highgrove, and he also keeps some rare breeds. So he keeps Gloucester cattle and various breeds of sheep, and he milks the Gloucester cattle alongside his commercial dairy herd, and he's genuinely interested in what we do and very supportive. My view has always been that what we're guardians. We're guardians of our heritage, and we should be looking after these breeds and passing them on to the next generation.
The achievements and athleticism of Occultechies in Russia and Europe caught the eye of Americans, and the first Occultechies were imported into America in 1979. While the Occultechie is still on the American Livestock Breeds Conservancy's threatened list, this horse is catching the attention of competitors across America. Occultechie horses are known for their smooth grace, athleticism, slim cat-like build, and their gleaming metallic coats. With a little over 600 purebred registered Occultechie horses in America, many are being used as breeding stock. However, those horses that are being ridden competitively excel in their disciplines. The Occultechie's fast recovery rates, incredible stamina, smooth agility, and willing temperaments make them the ideal mounts for endurance, eventing, jumping, and dressage. The Occultechies are currently being ridden for fox hunting, vaulting, and pleasure as well. Their diverse colors, metallic glow, and unique conformation make them stand out in any discipline. When speed and stamina are required, this desert breed has a natural advantage. They also thrive on a variety of human contact, making them an excellent equine partner.
Harlos Markham. My wife and I are owners of Cozine Springs Ranch outside of McMinnville, Oregon. Farm is, we're more of an oversized hobby farm. We have 250 acres. The heritage breed that we raise, of course, is our goats, is Spanish. The Spanish goats were brought to this country in the 1500s by Spanish explorers. They were the first goats ever in this country. The Spanish brought them in through Mexico and through Texas and on down toward the Carolinas even. The Spanish goat in Texas there were over 3 million of them at one time. 3 million in the United States. There was 1 million in Texas. And that has dwindled. When my wife and I started raising these goats, they were down to 8,000 according to the Livestock Conservation people. So according to them, there were 8,000 of them at the time we started raising them.
This is the very first clip shearing, lamb shearing, yearling shearing of the very first Valet Black Nose Cross F1 baby born in the United States.
Is that this bunch here?
Yep. This was the first shearing of the first lamb that was old enough to shear from the first round of imported genetics. And I was lucky enough to be on my mother's farm last summer when she sheared. I helped her scour it, and then I dyed a portion of the fleece to be this purple because I was going through an ultraviolet. I think it was when Pantone's ultraviolet was all the rage. So I did this, and it's been sitting in my stash since then. And we're here promoting the breed today, and it made sense. So here we are spinning that. This is a technique where I'm spinning. Usually when you spin, you're spinning from wool that's been processed and carded or combed or some sort of preparation that makes it uniform and easy to draft so that you create, you spin with a goal in mind, and that goal is generally, more traditionally, a consistent wool that you use for knitting or crochet or textile application. I don't do that. I like
Well, first the American mammoth was developed because most donkeys are smaller animals than horses. And so the American farmer, in his desire to have the best work animals in the field, bought essentially all of the large jackstock from Europe. And actually, all of it. They imported boatloads of donkeys. And these animals were bred for size, and they were bred up until the American mammoth was developed. And the reason they needed a large donkey, artificial insemination wasn't the norm at the time. And they needed donkeys that were large enough to breed draft animals. The European farmer stayed with horses. The American farmer stayed with or developed the American mammoth so that they could farm with mules. Well, you say, why would somebody take a perfectly good, say, Percheron and breed it to this silly-looking jack and make a mule when they could work the Percherons? Well, here again, the American farmer, very successful in his ideas and endeavors, he realized that a donkey lives approximately 40 years, a horse approximately 20 years, and so the mule being half and half, you'd get 30 years, a tremendous increase in the work life. Additionally, mules work in better teams than horses. If you see a horse hitch of 8, that means 8 horses working together as draft animals. You've got a big hitch. 20 mule team borax is an example of 20 mules working together, and they're more trainable, and so more production out of a mule than the horse. Additionally, a mare horse, a female horse, being used for breeding is not available to work. Mules are sterile, and so 100% of the offspring could go to work, where half of the offspring in the European picture would be kept in the barn to produce more horses.
I'm Bob, and I'm a member of the Livestock Conservancy. And this is Highlander, an American mammoth jack.
(2016) the Mother Earth News Fair in Albany, Oregon. The East Coast trip, New York, North Carolina, Virginia, Connecticut. Las Vegas, Portland, Santa Rosa, California. The West Coast trip, Arizona, Colorado, North Dakota, South Dakota. Amherst, Massachusetts. Another East Coast trip. 2017, Florida. The Western U.S. region. Montana, Wyoming, Colorado. Washington State and the San Juan Islands, Williamsburg and New England. 2018, Denver and the National Western Stock Show, Florida, Vancouver, Canada, Kentucky, Virginia, Washington, D.C., Portland, Salt Lake City, Utah, and Denver, Colorado, Gonzales, California, Gunnison, and Denver. Mother Earth News Fair, Albany, Oregon. The state of Washington, California. Sacramento, New York, Connecticut, New Hampshire, and Farm Aid. North Carolina, Virginia, Kentucky, Kansas, New Mexico, and Adam Danforth. 2019, Minnesota, Wyoming, California, Portland, Albany, Oregon, Santa Rosa, California, and the Heirloom Expo, Davis, California, and the Donkey Welfare Symposium, New York for the Roundhouse Edit. If you liked our podcast, please subscribe. This is how we keep going. And please tell your friends to join us. Please feel free to post any questions or comments that you might have to our social media sites. Our Twitter feed is at Backyard Green Films, spelled BKYRDGREENFILMS. Our Instagram is at Backyard Green Films, BACKYARDGREENFILMS. Our Facebook is Backyard Green Films. Our YouTube URL is youtube.com/Backyard Green Films.
We would like to thank all of our guests for this past year. And as the great Johnny Cash sang, "I've been everywhere, man." Well, it seems like it, but Hilaire and I love it and hope to keep bringing you great stories this upcoming year. Also, please make sure you check our show notes for all the links to our guest in this episode and all the other episodes we brought to you this past year. You have been listening to Agri-Culture with your host, Hilaire Bowman. Please tune in for more upcoming episodes from our travels. I'm Rick Bowman, your behind-the-scenes editor. Until next time. This has been a presentation of Backyard Green Films Productions, all rights reserved, copyright 2020.